people don't realize this. Everything is content. So like they used to say, oh, it's just because you're a sports player. What's sports? Sports is content. Sports is entertainment. Say Harry Potter's entertainment. It's content. It's just in a written form. You look at this a podcast. People want to listen to you. So the entry point for anything in business right now is content. And you look at guys like Now Boys, who we get inspired by, Logan Paul, the types of moves they're making is just built purely off content.
What it really means to live life golden. Yeah, we're golden, baby girl, we're golden. They're about to see us shine, cause we're golden. They can't ever break us down, cause we're golden. They're about to see us glow, cause we're golden. Yeah, we're golden, baby girl, we're golden. They're about to see us shine, cause we're golden. They can't ever break us down, cause we're golden.
Hey guys, just before we head into the episode, if you have been enjoying the podcast, please make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're using, whether you're using Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever it is that you're using. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really does help us out a lot. It obviously means more people will be able to see and trust our content. It also means that you'll get that content every week. And, you know, we really do appreciate all the support, all the shares, all the likes, all the comments, all the messages that we get. It does help us and spurs us on to keep providing more value and deliver, you know, quality content to you guys. So a massive thank you. Ice, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, bro.
Really excited. I've been wanting to do this for a while. As I was saying before, like the inspiration for what we are doing now has come from listening to the Ice Project and a lot of the podcasts that you've done previously and your philosophies on it. So I feel like we'll be able to have a good conversation just about pure business. Cool. But what I might get you to do is we might start, I guess, and get a little bit about your journey and how YKTR started. So
I grew up in a really small town, very cliche upbringing where I grew up. Everyone's dads either work out in the bush chopping down trees or in the mill. Had aspirations to play football, and my dad was always my football coach, so I grew around football. I'd play my junior league and then go be the ball boy. My dad was the coach of the senior side, so I was always in locker rooms, filled up my time. Used to do, like, every night I was doing something. Like Monday night was like Polynesian practice and then training, and then I was always busy doing stuff. So I had a mum that valued education and reading, and she knew sports was my favourite thing to do, so she basically said, if you don't do well in school, you can't play sports and can't go hang out with your friends. So had that nice little balance of, all right, you're going to work hard and try and be a sports person, but you have to balance that with education as well, which has served me really well and in my later life. And then sort of just grew that, played professional football, kind of will just dive over that, but got to a point where I was injured a lot. Done my ACL, snapped my Achilles, done my pec. And while I was injured, I had a guy named Michael Luck introduced me to reading. Not introduced me to reading, but gave me a book to read and gave me my first bit of perspective in life and just started reading. Kind of got bored of sports biographies, which I was into at the time, obviously being a sports person, and then just kind of gravitated towards like The Secret and self-development and then business. And I got to a point in football where I kept getting injured, but I'd read about 100 books. So obviously your perspective on life goes from like that to that. And just kind of wanted to try something different and decided to retire when I was about 26, 27 and just had a crack at this YKTR thing.
Yeah, awesome. I think the reading thing, like, I mean, I played a high level of AFL when I was younger, and I had like 3 knee recos before the age of 21. And similar type thing, whereas like, you know, it can be a lonely place being injured when you love something, right? And then reading as well. So definitely feel that, you know, in terms of how much reading can play a pivotal role in just opening up the possibilities as well.
Yeah. And I think, like, you only know what you know.
Yeah, 100%.
So when I was coming out of my hometown, as either my mum said, you either go to uni or you have a crack at football. So or you go work in the mill with your dad. So that was like my biggest fear. Like, I never wanted to stay in my hometown. I never wanted to work in the mill with my dad. And like, he gave me a great life. Don't get me wrong, but I just knew that wasn't for me. And I kind of knew like education, even though I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't enjoy the formalities of going to sit down and like, you have to be here from this time to that time. So like, I just saw league as my way out. And obviously there's way more options and stuff now, but I wasn't big into reading then as well. So I think it's a good time in life right now. I finished school in 2006. It's currently 2022. The world's changed so much. You think of like back then, like Shopify wasn't a thing, Instagram hadn't really even started, or social media was starting to just kick off as well. So I've seen the transition of it. I've been able to live pre-internet as well, so I've seen the other side of that as well. So I think I've just lived for a great period of life. Like I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, which was, in my opinion, the best time to grow up, and just sort of developed in my 20s. Playing professional sports, having money, and then having time to sort of develop other skills. So it's just been a really good time, I reckon.
Yeah, 100%. Did you know you wanted to get into business? Because you said obviously that like education wasn't for you. Were you kind of like, did you have the decision to start a business before you retired, or it kind of took you a bit to kind of get to that point?
In football, I still felt trapped. Like I talked about school before. So when you're in football, like you're told all right, you guys got to be at the airport. You got to wear this. You got to have this color on, all that sort of stuff. When you go into the game, you have to get to that point. To get to this point, go kick the corner, all that sort of stuff. When you go in front of media, you can't. Like I just really felt restricted. And it wasn't until I was on a trip over in Bali, and we could only travel in October at the time because obviously pre-season and season and stuff like that. And I met a guy who was like living by a laptop, like the laptop lifestyle, and I think he was just drop shipping or something like that. Cliche, trying to get out of business stuff. And I just like, from there, I just go, I don't want to work for anyone. I just want to work for myself. My first goal was, if I can get the same amount of money I was earning for football, while traveling, that'll be the dream. Yeah. And I set a bar lower. I think it was like maybe $7,000 to $10,000 a month. I was like, if I can get $7,000 to $10,000 a month, I'm quitting football like straight away. So, but like I said, I had that interest through reading businesses. I had friends that were starting F45s and doing cafes, and I always found those conversations interesting. Nate Miles, who was a really good football player, he was doing all that sort of stuff. So me and him used to go for coffees and just talk about business, and he used to talk about the Zanerobe guys because he was friends with them. And I just think Zanerobe was like the coolest brand in the world.
Is that like Rich Penny and stuff?
Yeah, Rich Penny. I know Rich. Like Rich Penny was a part of it, but the owners, Leif Tony.
Yeah.
I just remember hearing stories like, they've just gone to like USA and LA. They're just there for a week and just meeting people. And I used to think, fuck, they're so cool. What, they're going now, like in June, like while we're playing football, or he's gone off to a meditation camp and you can't speak for 3 days. Like that stuff always just seemed interesting to me, and that's what made me sort of go down that clothing route. And obviously I'm in a position now, obviously I'm not as big as Zanerobe. We're at their peak, but like I can do that stuff. Like I can go to LA tomorrow. I can like give free clothes to people. And obviously I've documented the whole journey for that as well. So that was always my thing. I just wanted to chase freedom to work on the ideas I wanted to work on with the people I wanted to work on, and do whatever I wanted to do on my own time. Yeah.
And then so obviously, like, I'd love for you to talk about, I think the thing that it shifted my perspective a lot from listening to and obviously watching what you guys do, is that you're a content company and you focused on that first. I'd like to almost go back to the start of like when was that a realization from the start and you were like, we need to kind of take this road? Or it was kind of like we were in it, figuring it out, and then we realized that this was the next big thing?
Yeah, we're probably about 5 months in. So we just kind of launched, and in my mind, I just go, all right, if we post on Instagram, like people are just going to rush in and buy it. And we kind of just set up a Shopify store, and then probably the algorithm of Gary Vee, like he come in one of his rants, and I never heard of him. And obviously he's been a big part of everything I've got to do, and I've got to meet him and shake his hand and sort of stuff like that now, which has been crazy. But he said, everyone should be vlogging. Like, if you're a brand, you should be vlogging. And I remember he brought up like Logan Paul and Casey Neistat and stuff like that. And a couple of years ago, like I was into photography. Like if you look at someone like Kalen Ponga now, like everyone praises him because he's into photography. Like I was into that very early as a football player at the same time. But when I was in England, we had to make these videos, and I was a new guy in the team, and they just made me the captain. So I got to pick my side, and then I had to film a video and edit it, and it just kind of come natural to me. And then I was just like, I was into, started watching like vlogs. I didn't have a TV at the time, decided to throw that away because I just wanted to be reading books. So at night time, I'd just be looking at YouTube, and I was big into Casey Neistat. And I remember there was like a moment where he pushed a product, and because I'd enjoyed watching his content so much, I was like, I'm just going to go buy that even though I didn't even want it. So that was just kind of like the wake-up call for it. I wish I went a little bit harder with the content early on, because at the time vlogging was the thing, and I don't think vlogging's as important anymore. But we started vlogging. We'd done our first one. Corey got a parking fine. That was basically it.
Yeah.
It was funny. And the second one, he ended up crashing our drone, and I just seen the engagement from it, and then our sales picked up, and I just saw this little thing. I was this is it. So we just become vloggers.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the thing that, again, like even just listening to yourself and there was a moment where, like you were saying, like it's content first, and like the whole idea around if you can get someone to engage and keep their attention, they will buy from you, and they'll buy from you purely because of the relationship that you create with them.
And people don't realize this. Everything is content. So like they used to say, oh, it's just because you're a sports player. What's sports? Sports is content. Sports is entertainment. You look at someone like, thanks, man. You look at sorry, business going on here. You look at someone like, say, Harry Potter. Harry Potter's entertainment. It's content. It's just in a written form. You look at this as a podcast. People want to listen to you. So the entry point for anything in business right now is content. And you look at guys like Now Boys, who we get inspired by, Logan Paul. The types of moves they're making is just built purely off content.
They're on another level at the moment, aren't they? Those guys.
They've been around. Like I forget, like they've been around for 12 years. Like they started making content 12 years ago. So it feels like they popped up overnight. And it's funny, like sometimes me and Lukey, who you just met, like the ideas that we talk about behind the scenes, they end up doing them. But it's cool to think that you're on the same sort of thinking line as those guys as well. So I think we're on the right track. We just sort of need to hold our breath, take our time and pivot.
Yeah, I think the thing that, like, again, like they're probably the testament of like you don't necessarily need to. I know that's what was in my mind. It's like you have to be always talking about the thing that you're selling, right? And then, you know, I think from you guys and also them, like theirs is just pure content, attention, and then because people really like love them, like their following's like cult-like, you know what I mean? Like people love them, that they've been able to. You know, I think merch is one of their biggest. That's their biggest revenue stream, and then obviously they've just opened
alcohol as well.
Alcohol.
They've gone into supplements as well, and like we've had all these conversations with alcohol and supplement companies as well, which has been funny, which has been cool to see. But yeah, like if you look at entertainment, so in my mind, I see entertainment as like escapism first and foremost, entertainment or educational. So those are the types of things I look into. So if you look at some of the biggest stars in the world or some of the people that you dive into, for me it's Gary Vee, he's in educational. Someone like a global rock star like The Rock, he's entertainment. And like a lot of it's just escapism. Then you've seen the inclusion of like reality TV shows in 2008, and obviously the prime example of that is Kim Kardashian and the Kardashians, and the amount of product they're able to sell in terms of commerce coming from content. Then obviously with the internet and social media, those walls drop down where you don't need a TV company, you don't need to go, all right, these guys are kind of entertaining. You can pick up your phone, you can pick up a camera, and you can upload to something like YouTube. Then you become a reality TV show, then you become a star. And then you see guys like Logan Paul and Mr. Beast and all those types of guys really start to dominate because they understood the platform. Like, it doesn't matter where the media is coming from, as long as you can get attention, you can monetize it.
It's so true. Going back to, like, I guess the early days then, like, is there anything, because obviously there's, like, the relevant stuff, like content, obviously it changes, and what it was 10 years ago is totally different to now, but more from just, like, a pure business perspective, whether that be, you know, hiring talent, I don't know, managing cash flow. Was there anything that you guys did early on where it was, like, that click moment and you were like, oh, like, this is, you know, you either seen it may have a massive impact, maybe outside of content, but like, you know, even just from like a, you know, maybe a management perspective, you're like, yeah, this is really where we're going to go?
I think, yeah, I'm still learning, to be honest. Like, this clothing game's changed so much. So what I learned early on is, so if you look at clothes back in the day, they used to go launch summer and you used to have this big like 40-piece collection, and you roll into winter. You kind of had 2 drops a year. And what you sort of found from content, obviously you're trying to talk outside of content, but people get buyer's fatigue straight away. So as soon as you drop something, people get hyped about it and want to buy it. But if they see it in 2 weeks from now, like, they're not as enthused about it as well. So sort of understanding buying behavior. I think Facebook ads was huge. I was big into self-education, and a few of the courses I've done were on drop shipping. I'll tell you a funny story. So like I told you earlier about Bali, like the way I saw out getting $7,000 to $10,000 a month was through drop shipping. So I was on Instagram, and all I saw was like dog videos and girls doing dogs. And I seen this American company selling dog t-shirts, and I was like, how do they do that? So they jump on Upwork, and like, instead of saying like send me nudes, it'd be like send me your dog nudes and stuff like that. So I used to have this guy on Upwork who used to make all these t-shirts for me. I used to get him like $5 just for a design, put them on the print on demand style, and just sell them like that.
Yeah.
Started a dog page, had a video that went viral from Facebook ads. It was a video of a dog, and he had a hoodie on like this, and someone was doing a tattoo for him, but it looked like the guy was tattooing the looked funny.
Yeah.
And it went viral. all the comments started taking off, and the first thing I done, like I went to the comment section, like liked everyone, got them to follow, and I just started driving traffic towards that, and I was getting like Texas ladies, obviously this is like Facebook advertising chat,
yeah.
Texas ladies between the ages of 40 and 45 buying my dog t-shirts. And that's how I was making money for a little bit as well. But the thing I learned about that was like I had an alias as a customer service person, so I saw that as a female business, so I had a female alias as a Gmail account, and I used to reply in a female tone. So obviously learning about brand tone as you get on, but I was just doing stuff like that. And the thing is, like, I felt yuck doing that.
Yeah.
Like I was making okay money. I was making $200-300 a day. And then obviously not with all the right margins and shit like that. But I just felt yuck doing it. So I was like, oh, let me just focus on something that's going to build brand for a long time. And obviously Facebook ads has been a big thing of how we've grown. Obviously it's a lot harder to do Facebook ads. You just need more money. But when I'm starting to talk around different businesses in my space and I look at their ad spend, everyone's just up in their ad spend, or they're not being smart with it.
Do you think that that's like, is your headspace now that you're trying to move away from that? Not necessarily like it's going to be a pillar, but like you're thinking that there's new opportunities on the table?
There's always going to be new opportunities. We talked about like TikTok before. I think podcasts is a space that's really going to grow out. I think it's that massive here in Australia just yet as well. I think influencer marketing is always going to be important. There's people on TikTok that are starting to blow up now that have never had a brand deal laid on them, and they're starting to do shout outs for gifting, which is like very old school in Instagram, like 2013 to 15. And there's always just going to be new platforms that pop up, but I think the principle is always going to be the same.
Yeah, 100%.
I think good looking people are always going to be relevant, as harsh as that sounds in today's
That's
age.
true.
If a good looking girl's walking past, we're looking, and that's just the way it is. And people go, there was no like influencers before social media, but there was models, like there was Victoria's Secret models, and they've always been relevant. So I think the core principles of marketing have always going to be the same. I just think platforms change as well. So we've been in Instagram now. We've seen it starting to die down. The engagement's dropping off. We have to spend more money to get ROAS and stuff like that. So we're like, oh, why aren't we spending all our time on TikTok right now? And we've moved probably our best employee over to TikTok right now. And people would see it as a minor job, but we see it as like that's the most important thing and where we need to be right now.
It's so true. I think.
And to be fair, if you're listening to this and go look at our content, it's nowhere near that. But from next week, there'll be systems in places, there'll be KPIs, there'll be strategy, and that's the important part.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to kind of tick on that. Like, what are you seeing like from a state of play point of view in business right now? Like, what you're obviously. I look at you and I think you've got a really great business mind. How are you seeing the landscape for 2022? Like, obviously we talked about TikTok, but, you mentioned things before, like obviously when you first got into it, it was, like Shopify is obviously going to be a big pillar. Like, how are you seeing the state of play in business right now, and like what are the biggest opportunities to come?
I think individual branding as a person. I think when I look at my consumer behavior, I don't buy anything off anyone that I don't know who the founder is. I don't know where their content is. Even now and then I might, like I bought a Balenciaga. I don't know who runs Balenciaga, but I thought that'll look cool. I wore it, just felt the same. I think branding is key to everything. And like long-term branding, obviously Gary Vee's my guy. We just seen a big NFT little bubble sort of burst lately, and all the things he was talking about has kind of happened. There's been a gold rush, people just doing little cash grabs. You see people spending thousands of dollars of NFT with no utility behind it. I think that's always going to be the case. When there's something new and there's money on the table, people want to come in and try and take it. I think long-term branding and individual branding is always going to be really important. And I think it's important to understand who your founder is and where it's coming from. And it's kind of like them old school values where like used to go, like I go to the same coffee place because the barista knows my name. So it's like, how do you create that humanized touch but at scale with the internet as well? And I know you can do that through like email marketing and do all the like little first name and stuff like that. But to create a personalized experience through technology so you can do that at scale, I think that's where it's at.
What advice do you have for someone who's like, maybe early days in business then and around building that personal brand and even the brand around the business, like how would you, maybe a better question, if you were starting from scratch right now, how would you do it?
That's a good question because a lot of people want to try and keep those things separate, and I know you talked about that off air. I think it's better when it's all encompassing. This is just my personal opinion. I think documenting, like people love a come up story. People love, and there was a one time in my house when I was shipping clothes out where my power got cut off, my engine. I didn't have the money to pay for a new engine, and I was driving all my stuff down. I built a good relationship with my post office guy that he'll come over with his truck and I'll just dump all the clothes over the side. And I was kind of embarrassed right at that time because people were calling me like an entrepreneur, and I hadn't even made $1 yet. I was just putting it all back into the business. I was working like days, 15, 16-hour days. Like I felt like crying sometimes, honestly. Like, and everything just went wrong. And I remember, and I'm running an internet company, so I had to go down to my garage and sit in my car, and there was a little PowerPoint there. So I used to just charge and build Shopify and Instagram and ship from there. But I was embarrassed of that because I'd come from a professional sports ground. But that's kind of like the best part of my story now. And I don't have documented proof. I can talk about it, but it's like when your dad talks about when he was younger and he had to work hard and work 3 jobs after school, you just don't believe it because it's not there on camera. So
it's kind of like the Gary Vee thing, right? Like, you know, when he pops up his videos from like 10 years ago and it's him selling wine, and it's like, you know,
there's proof.
Yeah.
There's proof in it. And I just think, just speak your truth, because there's times I've jumped on podcasts and people have called me like social media guru and business, and like that feels yuck to me because I'm not that person. And I think people really resonate with me because I'm honest. And I can jump on a podcast and people ask me a question, I'll just go like, I don't know. I don't want to put out content that I don't know about. So I think just being yourself and like truly yourself. I know there's a lot of people that follow my content that will almost replicate the same things I say in like almost like the next day. And it's just like people always feed it back to me. It's like be inspired by people, and then once you sort of develop your own style, just sort of head off in your own direction. There's nothing wrong with being inspired by people. Like our business models replicated off Gary Vee and Logan Paul and Now Boys and Barstool Sports, which is a big one for us at the moment. And I openly say, like, this is who we're trying to copy. Until we develop our own style, then we'll just move in our own direction as well. So I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think being yourself is always the best way to go. Yeah,
I think that's like, I mean, what I notice about the content you do here, like you, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I probably will be, but it's like 95%, or no, like 95%, you know, is all the real stuff, and then you guys are good at like making it entertaining as well. You know, like play. Not even that. It's almost like 100% authentic, but then being able to play on that and then use that as content type thing.
And I think that comes organically for us. So like Jordan, who's like me and him just. We clash as it is, and we clash as friends as well. And then obviously I've hired him as well, so that relationship's kind of mixed up as well. But like we don't manufacture drama. Like, and I like if you think about your favorite movie, your favorite book. If there's a movie without drama in it, it's a movie that no one's watching. Like just imagine a storyline where like you meet the girl and you fall in love and everything happens and it's all great things and stuff like that. I think a lot of people get bored of that. So. I'm not saying we manufacture drama, but when there is drama, we're not afraid
just
to talk
real,
about
like
it.
you let it kind of be there. You know what I mean?
And it backfires against me. Like I have people that used to love me now hate me now because, and I say to them, I was like, we've got a content house here, we've got all the equipment. If I wanted to, I could position myself to be the greatest guy in the world, but this wouldn't be real. I go out, get on the piss, I like hanging around with the boys, I gamble like a little bit as well. And what I learned with football was. Because we weren't allowed to be ourselves, whenever we're out in public having a beer, everyone's like, oh, should you be drinking or should you be stuff like that? So as I left football, I was like, I just want to be 100% myself, because wherever I go, people will go, oh, you're the same person. So that's really important to me as well.
Yeah, I reckon that's something I definitely struggled with early on, especially with my old business. And, you know, I was saying it before where I was like, I felt trapped from a podcasting perspective, and I almost felt like I was probably... Yeah, maybe that's I guess a bit of internal growth for me, but it was like when I was doing all that, I thought I had to be perfect. And then, you know, I even think back now and just think like, you know, I feel like now I've got a lot more of that freedom, but it's probably more internal growth rather than the things changing outside of me, or like needing a business or a certain type of business to do this thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't like perfection. So we talked about TikTok earlier. Like, you know when there's a professional ad on TikTok and it just fucking sticks out? And
skip.
Yeah, you just go, nah, get away from that. I think that's how people see content now.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be manufactured in the studio with great light and all this sort of shit. The best sort of content right now is UGC, like user-generated content. So if you think of your content like that, someone who's authentic in themselves, I think people can relate to it a lot more.
That's so true.
Like I used to think about PTs and like they always look perfect. And then someone told me, it's like they'll train for 6 weeks and then they'll do a photo shoot, and then they'll change their shorts. So they'll do all their photo shoots in 2 days. They'll go to different locations, and it gives them like a lot of content for it. And I was like, oh, that's actually really smart, but that's not like real life. So like 2 weeks after that shoot, they're posting, and they're still ripped up. And I'm like, bro, what does this dude eat on like a cheat day? Like, I'm more interested in that content.
Yeah.
But that's just me. So I think just always being authentic. Like, and I've had a lot of people come up to me over the years and go, fuck, you're the exact same person in real life. And that's important to me, because there's a lot of people that aren't. I think the 1-to-1 ratio is something I talk about a lot. Your 1-to-1 ratio means how you're living on social media to real life. If you can get that as close to 1-to-1 as possible, I think you're going to be in a good place.
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of you guys and like the challenges, like you mentioned before, about Simi and like how you guys clash and the management side of it, because I feel like that's, I don't know about you, but for me, like that's always the biggest challenge is like, as you guys are starting to scale, the ability to manage the dynamic and obviously that's probably more your role now is like, how does this business function on a day-to-day and so on?
Yeah, it's kind of understanding that everyone operates in different ways, and I've talked about this many times. So where like someone like Simi and Caleb, very similar people, very emotional. If you start digging into their childhoods and stuff like that, stuff starts to really make sense, and it gets a little bit scary. But like they're very similar, where you kind of have to be arm around them. You have to pat them on the back. You have to tell them that they're good. Like Simi's like the pretty girl that you need to tell that's pretty all the time for him to really thrive. And then when you do that, he thrives. Where someone like, say, me, Chico, and Justin, we've come from sports backgrounds, so we talk very direct. And within sport, you get a quick feedback loop. So say if I miss a tackle, they score a try, and that's on me. The feedback loop is that quick, where you're like, you get up, you look around, you got the crowd booing at you, and then you have to go into a huddle and look your teammates in the eyes, and then you have to go off the field and look yourself in the mirror. And then on Monday, you're getting pulled up on that as well. So that accountability has really been important for us and our feedback loop between those boys. But then we talk very direct and we swear. So we're like, fuck, that's not good enough. Where if I said something like that to Caleb, or someone to like Lukey or Jackson, they respond to that in a different way. Where Lukey and Jackson, who were the other two workers, they've come from workforce, they like direction, they like targets, and you kind of just give them a target. You're like, I need you to get us there, and they can get you there as well. So, but you also understand like the world's perfectly balanced. So if you think about this, like school classes, like for every smart person, there's like a dumb person, or for every great player, there's a dumb player. And once someone told me that the dynamic is always going to be the same within a workplace, like you stop trying to judge everyone, and you stop trying to keep everyone as accountable as the other person as well. So
yeah, and 100% correct. Because I mean, again, football background, it's very direct. It's like you said it before, like you miss a tackle, there's someone in your ear on the field. Like sometimes it's not even waiting. It's like that's direct, but you get so used to that, and then translating that across, like even for myself, like hiring and we're not as far along as you guys, but hiring and starting to understand that dynamic of like, I can be direct here, but over here I have to almost, it's almost like pulling, getting behind someone, pushing them up, and then being able to pull other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I had a coach once, he said to me one time, I don't know if I need to put my arm around you or kick you up the arse.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned about, and I played halfback, which is direct teams, and one of the older boys told me, he goes, you got to treat the Islander boys different to like the white Aussie boys. You can swear at a white Aussie boy because they don't care, that's how they talk. With the Islander boys as well, and I was very similar, like you can't talk back to your parents or else you get like a hiding. So you're never taught to like have that like dialogue of back and forth. So when you spray them, they don't have the communication responses to come back to you and ask why. They just go like, oh, head down, because otherwise if you talk back, you get a hiding as a kid. So it's a little bit dark, but when someone told me that when I was like 18, 19, I was like, oh, that makes sense. So at the end of the day, like your business is built on results, and leadership's very different to management. So leadership's like, I feel like I'm good at leadership. I can get all the boys around it. Hey boys, get everyone excited. Let's go that way. Where management is like, all right, this group is going that way, but this person needs this person needs this person needs this. And I don't think I'm really that type of person, because probably, I wouldn't say I lack emotional awareness, but like this is how I've been raised. My dad is like, if you want to do something, go do it. My mom's like, oh, I need to lift to town. She goes, why don't you just use your feet? Why don't you go walk? This is what I want to do. All right, go weed the garden. I'll give you $5. So that's how I've been raised. So like when people come to me with problems, I'm like, I'll just go do that. Like, but they didn't operate in that way. So It's been interesting. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's hard.
Forever changing too, right? Like as the team gets bigger, it's like, you know, you just have to. It's like another dynamic.
Yeah, it's just more problems. And to be fair, like these days I moan about it, but I wouldn't want to be in the other spot, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you? Because like, I mean, you guys look at yourselves as a content company first, right? So from a structure perspective, like, I feel like there's always two ways that you can really go, and then eventually you try to get both of these things to cohesively work at the same time. But like, you can always go brand first and really go all in brand, and then, you know, like, you still have a great product, but the brand is always you're always trying to build one. But like, how does that change from a structure perspective? How you think about the structure of a company? Because like, there's obviously, like, if you were to go into a large company and there's organizational charts and like, you got management, and then, you know, you've almost got like, I don't know, like 6 pillars of business, like operations, finance, culture, and team, and then and management, and then there's like, you know, product, marketing, and sales and type thing. But I feel like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I do, like, I like to analyze, but you guys have a bit of a different structure in a sense, like
yeah, it's a little bit loose, to be fair. Like, I've kind of hired my mates first and tried to figure it out, and kind of hasn't really worked. And we're in those conversations right now where, like, all right, guys, like, I've given this to you, and like, there's a bit of entitlement here. I'm actually looking around for new guys. Like, we've had these conversations, we've had them this week, but like, it's kind of like the marketing conversation. Like, as more platforms change, more things stay the same. And like, as we start to grow, you go back to the core basics. And obviously, we've got 7 staff right in here. Once it gets to 10, you start to break off into little cliques. You start hanging around in 4s. It's like you were back in high school again. It's important to have hierarchy systems and someone who they need to answer to. And the hard thing right now for us, and especially the working side, like, there's talent, there's working, is that we cross across both brands just because we don't have enough people, and it's very startup. And one morning you're working on designs, the next part you're cutting up a vlog, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not the best system, and I understand that, but I'm kind of just coming to the realization now that it's like, this is probably not sustainable for growth.
Yeah.
It's not a solid foundation for us to go up.
It's such a hard dynamic though, isn't it? Like, because at the end of the day, you know, that's how almost startups do run, but it's like, it's almost like a sliding scale, I guess, like, you know, trying to implement these different management systems, but then also understanding that you're going to have people doing hybrid roles and multiple different things at the same time. So
I think you have to now. Yeah. Like, I think if someone come in and they're like, I can only do this, like, I wouldn't hire. Like, because you're just not, like, in this space right now, and something that's moving so quickly, like content, and like, we're pivoting from YouTube to TikTok. You need to be able to pick up a new skill straight away. I think it pays to have many hats on. It pays to be versatile. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, amazing. That's a good point. I think that's really interesting, especially because it's a content first world at the moment, right?
Yeah, and eventually we'll like all break off and like, all right, you guys are going to be sales and management, you're going to be looking for ads. All right, these guys are purely on YKTR and the clothing side, and these guys are just content. But like we draw a lot of inspiration off Barstool Sports and Erica Nardini. She's really interesting to listen to. And like you say, you're having problems with, like, everyone's having the same problems.
Yeah.
You think these problems are unique. Everyone's got the same shit going on. So when I start to bring up my entrepreneur mates, same shit. Staff.
Yeah,
entitlement. People want more money. People, like, you know what I mean? So it's always the same stuff. And you just got to find those sort of mentors that you can bounce on, all those podcasts or books you can read, because I bet you someone's written about it before or talked about it on the podcast, and you sort of lean in towards that as well. So, but the other side of that is like, we've got a mad culture here, environment. Like, it's fun. Like, don't get me, it's fucking so much fun. But then you balance up, like, do we have a small crew, but you can only make this much money, or do we make this much money and have a crew that's not as tight and not as balanced? And I walked into the offices around. I walked in. I won't say their names and stuff, but I've got friends who are in this clothing space. Walk in the office, walk around, like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't it. Like, this isn't the vibe I want. So I read somewhere that Supreme, biggest streetwear brand in the world, have 8 staff in their head office.
Oh, really? It's kind of like the Jeff Bezos thing, right? It's like, you know, if you can't
2 pizzas.
Yeah, like, I always think about that and think, like, almost like, you know, I know something that we're thinking of at the moment is like, we've started like an agency on the side which can like service the podcast company, but then like that's just kind of like happened really quickly, like not like heaps of clients in the pipeline type thing. But even the way I'm thinking about that is almost like the micro teams thing.
Yeah.
Like instead of having like a marketing department, and it's almost like you have like a marketer that works in like one micro team, so that like the client always feels like they're working with the same team,
person,
with that culture point of view.
Yeah, because I got a digital marketing agency as well called Dice Digital,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like we've very much like that. So if you look after, I think it was up to maybe 5 clients, that's when we know to hire on someone else. Because obviously when you're feeding back and you're spending money on Facebook advertising and stuff, you want to deal with the same person over and over again. Yeah, but like I agree with that. Like from an ego standpoint, if like, hey, we've got 50 staff, and like, that sounds fucking sick.
It does.
From an ego standpoint, but then like you think, all right, that's 50 wages I have to pay every fortnight. Super.
Yeah, true.
And then there's like I've got problems with 8 staff. You times that by way of 5 or 6 or whatever it is. Like it's just gonna be more problems. Everyone's going through shit in their life. We've had breakups, we've had mental health issues, we've had people in therapy here as well, and they come to you and then they ask you for advice. So I don't think big is always better.
Yeah, I mean, it opens the. This is a question that just come into my head, but like the relationship between like margins and growth, right? Like you know, like do you think that I'd love for your opinion. Do you think that you necessarily need to sacrifice margin in order to grow, or do you think that you try to improve efficiency through the work that you do and try to keep the same margins?
I reckon start with that one you just said there. Like margin's everything. So we've upped our Facebook ad spend probably about 3-4x per month. You know what I mean? We've spent more on Facebook ads this year than we did all of last year, easily. And the only reason because last year we didn't have enough stock to drive traffic towards to as well. So, like I say to the boys, I say it very early. Like I'd rather have us as a team and we all grow together. And if we need to bring on people, we will, but there's always going to be more money for you guys as well. There's never going to be a ceiling on your earning capacity. I want you guys to make more money. And then do we build bonus structures and stuff like that? And like people like that at the start, but then obviously when it comes down to like the work side of it, it's like maybe this isn't the right person for us to grow as well. So it's a tough question. It's your pick your poison. Like I say this all the time with some of the boys. Like if we want to walk down this path, we just don't get the things that go down this path as well. So I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I just like, where do you want your business to be? That's the. Like, do you want to be Gymshark and try and take over the world and take on Nike and Adidas? Like, I don't think I would want to be that. Like, that seems like a headache to me. Or someone like Supreme. You got 8 staff.
Yeah,
literally the biggest brand in the world.
Yeah,
I think that's cooler, in my opinion. Like, I look at guys like LeBron James and he's taking his boys off him from his hometown and they've all grown together. I think that stuff's kind of cool to me.
Yeah, 100%. I think it just talks to like the fact that there's more than one way to skin a cat type thing. Like it's like, there's not one path, right? There's a million. And, I think, and this is the other thing, like around the structure question that I had before was like, I guess like I look at you guys and think, you're willing to create your own path and do it. It doesn't have to be like the same way that say the best company did, but you guys are just willing to try and different things.
I'll have a crack at anything.
Yeah.
Like I literally come up YKTR Sports when I was coming back from my nan's funeral on a plane. I wrote down the business model on a piece of paper and it turned out nothing like that because obviously COVID happened. Like we kind of saw us as making original shows like Complex and like they do sneaker shopping and hot wings. I heard the story of that hot wing sells like $20 million worth of hot sauce. And I heard the comments, I was like, oh, so in my mind, I was like, oh, what's the shows that we can make? I've seen us work for YKTR with me, Chico, and Normie. I'm only filming us 3. And we were able to sell like a fuckload of clothes from that. I was like, how do I bring other people in and turn it into commerce as well? So that was kind of the business model behind it. And obviously we're still in that phase and you're going up at people like Fox Sports and $1 million budgets and tens of $1 million of budgets. And we just started with a couple cameras. And I think, like we sort of touched on earlier with TikTok, it doesn't need to be well produced anymore. It can be. No,
it's dispersing. It's kind of like the Joe Rogan stat where he's bringing in, I think it's like 3 times CNN or whatever it is.
It's crazy, bro.
It's ridiculous. And I think it just shows like, and it kind of really does prove like the back end, or it kind of proves that media and everything really in the world right now is like decentralizing / dispersing.
Yeah, it's just, there's a like everyone's got a chance. Like everyone's got an at bat now. Now, the things, whenever there's an easy entrance point, is it becomes like a Royal Rumble, becomes like the gold rush. Then it becomes about skill. So people don't see that. Like, it's never been an easier time to start a clothing brand in the world. But then you come in, all right, cool, you're going up against us, or we're going up against Nike and Adidas. You're fighting for that as well. So just because there's an easy entrance point doesn't mean it's easy.
100%. Last question, and then we jump into what we call, like, it's a segment. It's just quick fire, and it's just kind of like, short, sharp questions. You don't have to I always say this, but then someone's like says 3 words and then they're like, I don't know if I can say more or whatever.
Yeah, cool.
But if you were going to start a brand from scratch, right now, what would be your strategy? Like, what would you be doing?
I always go, I don't know, this is the wrong way to do it. I always go marketing first. I always go, what's the value I can give someone? So we're going to move into probably activewear pretty soon, over the next 6 to 12 months. Mine's like, how do I reverse engineer that? And it might be like, I might just have a dumb idea. Like I've never seen, like, when you go for, when you go for a run, there's nothing worse when you need to shit halfway through a run. Like, I feel like that's good, in my mind, I feel like that's a good marketing campaign where there's someone across the road and you're that person. Like, you were flying today, and the only reason you're flying is because you're trying to get to the toilet.
Yeah.
And like, and when I'm going for a run, I'm like, fuck, this would be good. If you can make someone laugh, you can make them do anything. But then from that, it's like, what's the content looks like? What does the community look like? And obviously the product and the experience. And that's the point I'm at right now, is trying to, like, because we're getting new people in, it's like, how do we create that brand experience where they want to come back for more? And more so when they buy from someone else, it's like, I don't feel the same about this. Because essentially, like, it's a fucking black hoodie. It's got the same holes, the same, like, it's the same shit. Different material, maybe, different brand.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you put it on, like, you feel a different way.
It's like the essence of something, right? It's like, and I think that's why content's so important in marketing, because it changes the experience. Like, I've always remembered a saying, and it's like, you could have the best meal in the world, but if you ate that meal in a place that smelled like sewerage, you wouldn't enjoy it.
No
right?
way.
So it's like, I think understanding that, like, and humans, we often kind of always go to the most logical answer or try to find that, and often we forget that humans are irrational. We don't make decisions that way. We make decisions emotionally, and I think, like, I guess that talks to how important marketing is. We had, like, so last week we had Jess Hadsis on, who's like the founder of Frank Body.
Yep.
And like,
killed it on the marketing campaign.
Mate, like
one of the influencer marketing.
Crazy, the depth they went to. Like, she was saying, like, talking about, they were thinking about the experience, and they were saying, like, you're naked when you're doing it, so you're rubbing coffee all over you, and they were like, it's a really intimate experience. And at the time, like, when they started it, like, now sexualization is normal, but back then it was like frowned upon. So, like, they were like, we wanted to not only just be different, but actually pioneer that kind of sexuality piece and stuff, and as well. And that's when they started, like, taking the photos in the showers with, like, that kind of stuff. And then she was saying, like, that was completely manufactured. Like, she was like, we meant that. Like, we started taking photos with the hope that it would catch fire.
Of course.
But it's like the deeper meaning behind that, I feel like, is like, that's really what marketing and brand is all about.
And you want to be a little bit edgy. Like, you want to point a difference. Like, if you drive anywhere, if you look on your phone, everything's marketing. Someone's trying to say you something. Every time you drive past, like, a signboard, there's marketing there. There's little stickers everywhere. So you want to point a difference. And obviously they always say sex sells, but where's the fine line on that? And obviously in today's day and age, obviously a lot of feminism and stuff like that as well. So I think the right amount of edginess is a great marketing campaign. I had a guy tell me on a night out one time, he goes, if you make a girl laugh, you can make her do anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the same with marketing. If you can make people laugh and make them feel good, or if you can make them think, or if you can make them escape their normal life, when it comes, everyone needs clothes. I said a hoodie's a hoodie before, but you still want to be warm.
Did you watch the, what's his name, the Barstool president? Dave.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, even with his personal brand, how he's obviously very controversial and just kind of goes after people as well. But I think, like, even listening to him talk and the way he thinks about it, like, because I hadn't actually seen those guys before.
He's a big part of everything that we do, and obviously he's very confrontational, and conflict's important. And not important in marketing, but we pay attention to it. So if we're sitting here right now and a fight breaks out over there, like, we're just going to carry on talking. We go like that. We'll go, what's going on?
Yeah.
We go, and like, you look at UFC, the fastest growing sport in the world. that's built off conflict. So we pay attention to it. I know he buys into it, but that is who he is. And like, even though like I look up to him and that sort of side is not where I want to be. I don't want to be going to go up against Fox Sports. It's just wasted energy for me as well. But if you pay attention to what they're doing, very smart people.
Yeah, 100%.
Very smart. What they sell, like all their ad revenue, events, which is really important. They just try and build brand, and then monetize through commerce later. The Eric and Nadine is really interesting to listen to. If you're a token CEO, really good listen if you're into this sort of space.
Yeah, crazy. All right, man, we're going to jump into quickfire now. So yeah, just don't hold back on any of the answers. There's no time limit or anything like that.
Cool.
One piece of advice for your younger self.
Buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, literally. I reckon we could all say that. Did you get into it at all in the early days? Like,
no,
you know,
I wouldn't have the money to do it. Like I was fucking on my ass, to be fair. So spending money onto something like that was foreign, like so far over there.
Yeah, it's the same as me. I only learnt about investing maybe 3-4 years ago.
I think everyone sort of goes for that question, but one of my I wish I'd left football earlier. Like, even though I was getting paid good money, I wasn't happy in it. And the way I sort of measure happiness now was like the first 5 seconds in the morning, like, am I excited to get up or not? And that's basically it. So everything I do in life is gravitating towards like, was I excited to get up this morning? So I was. I'm excited to come here. So I wish I could teach my younger self that. Like, I make good money now. It doesn't make you any happier. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not ungrateful for it as well, but just keep doing things that make you happy.
Yeah, it's like, you know, money's just the tool that, like you said, that allows you to do the things that you excite you. And at a certain point, like, you know, you can do all of those things. So it's like, just do more of those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, don't chase the dragon.
Like, my friend downstairs, like, he got a G-Wagon and nice. He's probably got $800,000, $900,000 worth of cars. And we're having a chat, and I was like, you literally can't really drive a nicer car than what you've already got. Maybe like, I think he's going to buy a Rolls Royce soon, like something stupid like that. And I was like, once you drive that, there's literally nothing else.
Yeah, literally.
So you're placing your happiness on material things, and it's not like, I don't know, there's always going to be something nicer. And Caleb, who's a young guy that works for us, like, his goals were like, I just want to have like followers. Like, once you get to that amount of followers, you just want more and more and more. And it reminds me of that sort of Bob Marley clip when they like, are you a rich man? And he replies, he goes, like, what's rich to you? And he say, my riches is life. Like, he doesn't value money as well. So I hear a lot of people say, I listen to Steve Bartlett a lot at the moment. I think he's really interesting. He said the saddest day of his life was when his company got listed on the stock exchange, and is worth tens and tens of millions of dollars. I've had Mark Boris on here as well. He made $500 million in a day. Like, he sold his company. He was sitting in New York. He sold $500 million. I'm on the podcast. I'm like, bro, what'd you do? And he goes, nah, I just had a beer and a pizza and went home. Like, that's a waste. But if you got like the richest of the people saying that money don't make you happy and stuff like that, there's obviously value in it somewhere. Yeah,
100%. I agree. So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking of starting a business?
I'd try and look forward. Like, I don't think clothing business is that innovative. Like, I know we've had like 250, 300 people start clothing business for an online course. Actually, Timmy done my online course and started Front Runner. I think a cool business is light. So I make more money from selling online courses than I do running YKTR, and it's just me. I could hire someone right now and they could do that. I feel like there's light businesses. We're in the information age right now. Best thing to sell is information. You think of podcasting. I think podcasting is really cool, because the bigger you grow, like, you don't have to do a longer interview. Like, if you do an hour interview and you get 10,000 views right now, then all of a sudden you get 100,000 views. You don't have to work any harder.
So true.
Yeah, so I like to look at business models like that now, where it's light, it's free, and it's not based on your time.
It's a little bit left of center, but it just kind of triggered in my mind. Like, how do you think the integration of, say, blockchain starts to not from an investment standpoint, but actually make its way into business?
I think like right now it's too early to say what's going to happen in terms of like what type of industry you're in right now. I think it's going to be really important. So let's just say like metaverse for clothing right now. So potentially instead of you jumping on your phone looking on, you can have a headset on and walk into a virtual store, and you might see a virtual me there, and you can try on all the things, and it matches your perfect body shape and stuff like that. I think that's how it's going to integrate.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it's a hard because it's so broad right now, and it's a little bit of the unknown. And like we said, like I'm not saying there's an easy entrance point into blockchain, but with business, like we talked about with clothing before, but the good ones are going to rise and they're going to figure it out and they're going to build. Where if you looked at social media, if you think of social media as a blockchain, everyone built businesses on top of it. The people that killed it are the ones that invest in early. So they got in early, they invested in Facebook and Instagram. They made the money. So then you build out the platform of social media. And then what do people do after that? They build businesses on top of social media as well. So we're a business that's been built on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. Now we're going into Web3, where blockchain's like the new social media. So the people who killed it are the ones who invested into early, and then it becomes like a land grab. And there's like who can build the best business on top of it. But I do like the decentralization of everything. I love the sort of transactions and stuff like that. I don't have the answer, and I wish it did, because I think we'd be rich in 5 rich in 5 years. But how do you see it?
Oh, man, I've been back and forth on this. Like there was a period of like 4 months ago where I was like, we need to be there.
Yeah.
And then I kind of was like, we need to just back off a bit, like, because it's like, we just don't know. And I know that's not the reason you shouldn't do it, but I just had this feeling around timing is going to be really important.
Timing's everything, yeah. So, like, obviously, if you've got fuck around money that you can play around with, it's okay to be in that sort of space. And, you know, Gary Vee always gives it's like trying to buy land in Manhattan right now. And, like, obviously, if you bought a house in Bondi 50 years ago, you're worth a bit more money now. So if you got that type of money and you can do that stuff, you can play around, it's really interesting. From a sports side, and obviously I gravitate towards sports, I think the NFT play is always going to be really huge, and it's going to be huge for individuals as well. So we talked about what's important about starting a brand right now, and we said individual branding is super exciting. I think you're going to see a chance for much more athletes to brand themselves. So you might launch a 1,000 token NFT every single year. All right, this is my 2017 one. It costs $250, and there's 1,000 of them. So obviously there's 250,000 you can get into your system, and then with that 250,000 you can nurture that community. So you're like, all right, we're going to do merch drops. All right, you guys already bought, so here's a discounted one. With this money, we're going to donate it to a charity. You know, that type of stuff, and then you'll start to get players care about the individual brand more and more, and it brings more money into a system. And if you're an AFL player, if they're smart enough, they go, all right, we'll start to clip that ticket as well, so we'll take 20% of all those sales, but you guys have to drive all that stuff for you. There's just going to be a lot more money coming into the system. And like we touched on before, it's about individuality. Like I walk around Bondi and there's all these dogs and they've got their like names on the side of their things, and I'm like, fuck, that's cool, I want that for my dog. And it's about trying to provide a personal experience for that, and I think that's what blockchain can really, really do. Yeah,
it's so interesting. There's a guy named Scott Galloway. I don't know, he's a business guy, teaches like brand at like a big university, and he's a real pessimist. So he's like, metaverse is a head fake. He's like, all this. And I was like, okay, like, I don't think so. But I think he made a really good point. He's like, we've already got a metaverse. It's just not virtual at the moment. And he talks about sense. Apple and the App Store. Yeah. And I kind of feel like that's what it'll be. I feel like we'll eventually get to a point where a business will just be like a microeconomy, and whoever can create the most value will win. And I almost think of it more like in the information age with like Facebook, Instagram and stuff, it was always about how do they trap you in?
Yep.
Instead of, and I feel like blockchain flips that on its head and almost goes, it's not about trapping you in, it's about creating enough value that you want to stay in.
Yeah.
Because I think blockchain allows you to move to these different, like if it does eventuate to go to microeconomies, you know, what the blockchain does is allows you to verify your identity to get into those places. So it's like, if you're going into that, like they can't stop you from leaving, because the reason you don't leave Facebook is because it's connected to all this other shit. And, you know, you've got to create different accounts for every single social media that you kind of go into, and passwords and all that. Whereas, you know, I think with blockchain, you own the identity, and then it's almost like, I think about like, you know those movies where it's in the future and you walk up and it's like scanning your thumb.
That's cool.
It's kind of like that, but instead like all the data's with you instead of that company. And then my mind just goes to, how do you create enough value within your microeconomy to keep people in instead of creating barriers to stop people from leaving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it'll always be like even though we're going to move towards like the metaverse and stuff like that, human behavior is human behavior.
Yeah.
And whatever that happens is like whenever you get in crews, you start to sort of collect things. And if your crew values, if you're a girl, you value handbags, the virtual handbag's going to be thing. So you're always going to be business models in there.
100%.
Or we're guys that love Rolexes. There might be one virtual that's been verified on the blockchain by the actual Rolex company, and you've got it. So you're the man within that crew. So even though we are merging virtual, it's going to be this fucking exact same shit. One, it's going to be a land grab. Two, it's going to who can pull the best business on it. Three, it's like how do we segregate the rich people from we've got money, so we need to be in here. Look at Bored Ape Yacht Club. They're kind of like cool guys right now, and they can only do things that they can do, and it makes them seem like a little bit better. But in terms of social status, status signaling, like in the NFT space, they're the coolest guys right now. Like it's almost as cool. Like I'd rather have a Bored Ape Yacht Club than a Lamborghini. Like for me, what would you rather have?
Yeah, definitely Bored Ape.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Lamborghini. I'm just not a car guy, but I mean, knowing what I know and what the future is, and
that's what it is.
Yeah.
So we've got eyes towards the future, and we're like, oh shit, we've got something really cool right here. It's going to be bigger and bigger in the future, and you want one of the OGs as well. Where like Lamborghini is cool, but
it doesn't. I mean, like, yeah, and I think that's where the value creation actually happens, because we live in a virtual world, right? So a Lamborghini, you have to drive down to like, Chapel Street, or like that's Melbourne, Chapel Street. It's like to be seen with that Lamborghini, and then that's what makes people become aware of you.
Yeah.
Whereas with the Bored Ape, like you're in the virtual world, and that gets you access to the network that you're looking for. So
it's like if you look at it like Instagram, like the guy standing in front of a Lamborghini, you kind of look at him like, is this guy insecure?
Yeah.
You look at someone with Bored Ape and they've got their profile, you're like, fuck, that dude's cool.
Yeah.
Because he was ahead of the game. So like, I don't know, it's going to be heaps of cool things, but like we said, human behaviour is human, and nothing's going to change. It's just going to be virtual.
We'll make the same mistakes.
One thing I think someone would kill off, and there's probably already stuff for this. When I put an Oculus on, have you ever put one on before?
Yeah, crazy.
I get a fucking headache.
Oh, really?
So if someone, like say, probably Pfizer's going to figure this out before everyone, they're like, oh, what's the motion signaling tablet that's going to help people spend more time with the Oculus on? So like I start thinking about that. Like where was the problem? Like I don't spend too much time on them because it fucking gives me a proper headache. But in saying that, like I used to get a headache looking on my phone in the car, and I don't get that anymore. So maybe there's an adoption period. So someone's going to kill it doing the motion sickness tablet.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually am not sold on the Oculus. Like, I'm actually thinking, I actually think augmented, like, Apple will come in and just crush. Like, because I feel like the Oculus will be great, but it'll be like a PlayStation. Like Oculus will be great for gaming and like the virtual side of things that we need to do. Yeah, but I feel like, like humans, as much as we get addicted to that stuff, like some of us are just not going to want to do that. Instead, we want to be like Apple, where we can actually integrate it into our life a bit more. Like, I don't know, like I seen Apple are creating the glasses where you can integrate your virtual world into your day-to-day, where you're actually moving around in, everywhere.
That's going to I feel like that's going to happen anyway. Like, look at the first ever TV. Like, look at we're recording with cameras now. You couldn't do that. Like, we used to have one of those. My dad used to walk around with a camera like this over his shoulder. So everything starts big and it just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So I think that's going to happen. I think it's just tough to bet against Zuckerberg.
Man, see, I'm the opposite. I reckon they're done. I called it 5 months ago on a pod. I reckon I can't see a business that relies heavily on advertising revenue being able to make the transition into the Web3 space where that's not going to be relevant anymore. Because I just don't think...
So you reckon when we're going to be walking around the metaverse, there's not going to be a fucking billboard up on there?
You don't need to, more importantly, in my opinion. It's like, because you don't... Like, if you think about it, right? The reason podcasting or like content, social media went into advertising is because they had no other way, because the only way people would engage in content was because it's free. So you then have to monetize through advertising. Blockchain kind of takes that away because you can monetize through a social contract with your community. Yep. Yeah, like, so even like podcasting, like who's to say that won't be, instead of going to a big company, you can do micro advertising through NFTs through your community.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. But like community would still be subscription based, and if you look at like the freemium model of YouTube, where like if you're not paying for the premium model, you're still going to get ads anyway. In my opinion, I still ads are always going to be relevant.
Yeah.
Because there's just going to be too much money in it for people to turn down. Or there's going to be too much Bitcoin in it. So we'd be walking around this little place right now. If someone goes, "Hey, here's 50 Bitcoin. I just want my fucking billboard up there," and it gets, instead of like on a normal street, you're getting 500 people walk past. We're getting 2 million people to come through.
It's true.
Like, it's at the end of the day, it's sometimes hard to turn down money, and I think the same rules apply out here is going to happen in there.
Yeah. I do agree. I think maybe if I was to like rephrase, it would be more like a sliding scale. Like you'd probably just have to be less reliant on it.
Yep.
And then
that's important. So like we look at, like, if you look at our business model there, like one thing I learned pretty early on is diversify how you get money into it.
Yeah.
So we were very reliant on clothing, and we were very reliant on like, all right, we do big drops, so your money goes like that. You come in and you might go a couple of weeks without any money. It's not a really good business model to build. So like, all right, how can we add different revenue streams into here? We've got subscription models. We get ad revenue now. We get a bunch of different talent who can make clothes. We're going to start doing events, and we start getting paid for that as well. And then we have our merch on top of that as well. So it's, I think it's important, man.
Yeah, time will tell.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Even just like what we were talking about, the Web3 space will probably be.
There's always going to be something to
6
sell.
months in time. Who knows what the fuck it'll
No,
look
do you
like.
know? So when we go into this virtual world and you want to buy the virtual dunks, you can't just not know that from anywhere. Like you have to do some form of advertising for people to know, or else they don't sell.
Yeah. It's true.
So when you got Nike and Artifact combining up together, unless they market to you outside in Instagram and social media, because it's always going to be important. Not everyone's always going to want to go into there. But yeah, I think advertising is always going to be everywhere.
Yeah, true. We'll get back on to this. So what's the biggest watch this space for 2022
for us?
Just in general, like from what are you kind of like? This is it. Like not a prediction, but
Yeah, I still think this NFT space is really exciting, like we touched on. And like I always go from like a personal standpoint on things I know. I think that the cross between sports is the really interesting one. So you look at like, AFL's got great fan memberships, and you're a member, you get a seat here. We'll give you a fucking lanyard. And you walk around for lanyard, you're like, hey, I'm a member, I'm a gold member. I think the evolution of that's going to be really interesting. I think something like virtual reality tapped into like, all right, Richmond have just won. There's a guy in the team song and they're walking around and stuff like that. If you want to join that, put your glasses on, double click your Apple Pay, and for an extra $15 you can stand in the circle. And I know obviously the stuff's like a fucking long way off, and the sports like NRL fucking so useless and behind, and they're not. I don't think they're even thinking about shit like this right now. But I just think that's gonna be it. I think it's gonna be NFT, same shit, bro. NFT, content, community. That's it. That's all. Those are the main things, in my opinion, that help businesses grow. You look at Gymshark, they build their community, they give like free programs and shit away. I think it's just the same game, rinse and repeat, just different platforms.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you think? What are you looking at?
I'm still watching the NFT space. I think for me it's just like I have the feeling that I'm just looking for when it goes more into mainstream
Adoption.
Not adoption, more like business models. Like we use it at the moment and it's kind of like up in the air of like you can do anything with it, but I'm more like how does it work its way into ticketing and things like
do you know what
identity licenses, like I'm like property, like stuff like that. I'm like, okay, because I almost think we tend to always overshoot on things that are current on what they're going to do in the future. When I think what I'm looking for is more mainstream. Like I talked about it before. Like something I'm thinking about is how does NFTs make its way into sponsorship and advertising? That's the biggest thing I'm looking at. Just because it's relative
to you. So I think it's almost the same thing where like you think of sponsorship packages. There's bronze, there's silver, there's gold. It's like, all right, we built that into the system and they buy off that. Because I talked about this with sports people before, where someone like a Kalen Ponga, who's probably the most marketable guy in our competition, maybe besides Nathan Cleary, it's like, oh, if he had a gold NFT and they're worth $100K and this is the utility you get from him, all right, he's going to market your car dealership twice a year. And like, I see it like that, and probably a little bit different for us because we're on a smaller scale, but I think you take what's physical right now and you just move it into virtual, and I think it's the same game. Like the same thing we've talked about this whole conversation is like whatever's happening out here is going to be happening in there, and it's just how do you repackage it and put it into the blockchain and makes it everything a bit more seamless.
Yeah, 100%. What's the number one trait that you think a founder must have to succeed?
Resilience. As fun as entrepreneurship is, fuck, it's like so hard. It's so hard. And I used to like, at the start when everything was fun and everything was relying on me, I was like, fuck, this is mad. It gets to cruise around like it does, but like in these times you need to be resilient there. And it's like, everyone should be an entrepreneur because this is the best thing. But now I'm sitting there going, nah, like there's easier business models. We touched on earlier, like information age. We're in the information age right now. It's a lot easier to sell information, and podcast is a form of information and entertainment. It's a lot easier. So I'm starting to gravitate towards business models that can scale very quickly with minimal effort and minimal staff, I think.
Yeah. You said something before, which I was like laughing at, and it's like, especially when you're doing content, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, it's going so well. Like you're crushing it. And it's like, I fucking made $1 yet. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's fucking entrepreneurship 101. It's like people almost glorify just starting a business and they kind of don't associate, they think like, oh, you've got a business, you must be successful.
Nah, yeah, I used to think that too. So like when I grew up in my town, I was like, oh, he's got a business, he must be rich. Yeah, but like I listened to Naval Ravikant a lot, and he talks about like entrepreneurship. It's like you bleed every single day, you keep bleeding, but over time, like that little graph, when it goes up, and there's no obviously ceiling on your earning capacity, but it takes a special type of person to bleed every single day.
Yeah, 100%. It's like it's much easier to. No, I don't want to say that, but it's like something that resonated with me when I heard it was like, you can build wealth much quicker getting a really great paying job, but the ceiling's always there. Whereas the exponentiality, comes into it when you own a business, and it's like a bell curve. It's like, if you look at someone with a job, they're going to build wealth, on a linear scale, but like business is like this, and then you start to see that bell come at the end.
Yeah, so that flywheel effect sort of chat. So
that makes me sleep better at night anyway. That's why I keep grinding. You know what I mean?
And I started podcasting probably about 3 years ago, and like I didn't get my first ad, and I was getting very early on. I was getting like 5 to 10,000 because no one was really doing podcasts. So I was kind of like the new guy on the scene on each episode, and that was almost from fucking day dot. So, and I didn't even know how to monetize it. I didn't even know it was a thing. I just wanted to interview cool people as well. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I like those. I think podcasting's fucking mad. It's one of my favorite things to do, and if I could do it every day, I'd almost throw the rest away.
That's what I said. So when I was talking to you before, I was like, if there's one thing that I can do for the rest of my life, and I just get to do it, I'll do it. You know what I mean? So like I'll always have this show, probably regardless of, how big it gets, because it allows me to do what I'm doing now.
Do you know what it is, bro? And the thing I really liked about podcasting early on, because I used to go like, oh, hey, can I come have a coffee with you and like pick your brain? And I get those conversations all the time. And then someone broke it down. I think it was Naval, where he goes, yes, so if someone buys you a coffee for an hour of your time, you're literally saying your hour's worth $4.50. So if you put a value on your time, so my value on my time used to be like $1,000 I made up in my head. If no one's going to give me $1,000 for it, I wasn't going to do it. But ego comes in. Hey, I want to come talk about your journey. I was like, yeah, sweet, I'll sit down here and talk about it for ages. Now I've got a relationship with you. Like you can come back, or I can go to you. We can fucking go have a coffee and go have a conversation. So I think the networking aspect of podcasting is probably the most exciting thing, and the long tail of it as well. So we've got an hour podcast here. You get your 5 micros, you post it on. People just leave that, but now there's a relationship here as well. So I don't think people neglect that. Yeah,
that's the best thing about it, in my opinion. Just the networking. Like I've met people and learnt so much. Like it's like continuous learning, getting different perspectives on things that I just love, especially about business. Like I could sit in here and talk business all day, but it's so interesting just seeing, and it's probably been my biggest learning, is that like there's so many ways to do this thing.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And like in this space, there's different clothing, like there's probably about 5 or 6 different clothing brands, all very different business models. Like we drop every 2 weeks. I know people that drop twice a week, but they break it up. Like there's heaps of different ways you can do it. You quickly figure out that, like you said, there's not only one way to do everything.
Last question. So we're actually trying to create the ultimate diary for a founder.
Yeah.
So I know I know you kind of have a system that you use in terms of just managing your day and kind of your productivity and stuff like that. Like I guess it's like, if is there something missing that you think a diary should have, or is there a certain element that you're like, this is an absolute must?
So you're trying to put a whole diary together.
We're just trying to find the right dynamic. So like, we're
Kind of like Tools of the Titans, where you interview people and kind of put your things right in.
Yeah, get like something together. And we're trying to remove it, because I feel like the thing for me, like, I don't want a diary that I have to write fucking a million things in. It's going to take me 40 minutes to fill out, but it's like, what's the thing? You know, like for me, it's like finance metrics for the company. Like I feel like just being able to write that every week. I know we have like our, you know, like the systems and Xero, but in just a diary that I can put it there and just review quickly.
Yeah, that's cool. Like when I'm the most efficient is when, like, I know people call it like moving the needle or high profit actions. I think that's like, as a business owner, your job is to keep your business in business, and the way you do that is cash flow, and cash flow is oxygen, and the finance is really important. And it's probably lessons, our biggest lessons I've learned is when we haven't been paid attention to cash flow and everything fucks up, and China and boats, and you got invoices, and this has happened to us like 2 weeks ago. So that's important, but that when you come in the first day, you try and solve your biggest problems first. That's whenever I do that, I'll get to sleep a lot better. And it's not it's harder because we do heaps of fun shit. Like, oh, let's make a vlog, let's go fuck around, let's go talk to someone cool. As good as that is for branding, it doesn't always necessarily correlate to sales, and sales is cash, and cash is oxygen, and oxygen in business is everything.
Yeah, 100%. Mad.
What was the best answer you've heard on that?
Mate, it's new. We've only been doing it for 5-6 weeks, and to be honest, it usually catches people a little bit off guard.
It does, yeah. Threw me off.
Some people don't use them. Yeah, like you know, a lot of people are more just like meetings, but boom, boom, boom.
It's funny when you hear people start a business, but like none of them talk about numbers like straight off the bat.
No.
Like, so when the boys pitch me ideas, I'm straight on the calculator.
Oh,
like, how much
100%.
does it cost? Like blah blah blah. All right, you're gonna be selling this to make this, and sort of wake up to them pretty quickly of like why I won't be doing it.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's like, you know, you only learn that through experience, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're you go into business with an idea, and then you quickly try to piece it together as best you can, and cash flow and just numbers in general, if you're not already comfortable with that, is one of the hardest things to grasp, I reckon, in business. It's like
numbers always are, bro. Numbers, like if you step on a scale, like that's confronting, because if you haven't stepped on one in 6 months and you haven't been doing your thing, that's accountability. Numbers always accountability.
Yeah, it's so true.
You look at your P&Ls and there's those brackets and it's in red, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah, 100%.
We're not going to be here for long. So yeah, that's the good thing about numbers, they don't lie.
Yeah, and that's kind of comes back to that question before of like margins and growth and the relationship there. Like I feel like that's always a tough one, like allocating resources to a particular strategy, and I feel like you just get better at that over time. Like you said it before, it's like, okay, that's probably not worth it. You know, it's not going to get us it's not going to push to where we're actually trying to go. And
like, this is an interesting one because we're in content now, and now we're trying to hire talent. So like, I'll look at the boys' numbers now, and I'm like, all right, cool. This is how much ad revenue we're getting off. This is how much we're paying you. This is how much we're getting off the merch. This is how much we're paying you. So I start to and then when they start asking for more resources, they're like, oh, how come Lukey's not working on our stuff? I was like, bro, because there's no ROI on it. So understanding these lessons now, as we start to scale, I think it's going to be really important. And clear-cut KPI. So say if we bring on talent, right, all right, we're going to commit to 10 shows. If we don't get to X amount CP, it sounds fucking ruthless. But
it's like that in content though, man. Like
it is, yeah.
The thing is like, I feel like, you know, I was saying it before, like we did so we did the finance one and we cut that. You know, like we had to cut it, and it was like it was a decision made in a week.
Yeah.
And then there was another one we did, right? And it was like Project Startup, we called it. And it was like bringing someone in, running a competition, and then helping them launch their first product.
Kind of like a Shark Tank style.
Kind of, yeah. But we didn't do the Shark Tank version of it. We just did like the building of the product.
Yeah.
And trying to connect them with the right people and film the whole thing. And like we fucked up on it, I think, but not. Like it was more because it was so niche, and we did it like with like a boxing app, and like we went down that route because we thought like the guys were funny, that they're cool, and they could do it. But then it was like we just realized how much of a fucking beast it was to actually do.
Yeah.
And the second it didn't perform at the level that we thought it would, I was like, nah, we can't do that anymore. And I literally like we filmed the whole thing and only ended up releasing 2 episodes.
Yep.
And I was like like, you know, I look back and I was like, you know what? At the time, I was like, nah, fuck it. Like, we just can't do this. You know what I mean? But then I look back and I'm like, fuck, like, we put so much into it.
Yeah, and like you get the long tail growth off that eventually. You know what I mean? Like, you've put all your time and effort into it. Now you've got the skill set to look at something and go, no, that's not going to work. So yeah, and like some of the boys, like I think some of the boys just set some far-fetched goals that just don't make sense. So like Simi, for example, I like, well, what's your KPI for your? He goes, I want to get like 50,000 downloads per episode on YouTube. I'm like, all right, cool. Like I think I've got that like twice. He goes, I want that on every episode. All right, cool. So what's the strategy for it? And very soon you hear the like the awkward silence and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard. Don't get into business.
Yeah, yeah, it's like one of those things, isn't it? It's not as pretty as what it looks.
Yeah, and like entrepreneurship's cool. And I always hear Gary Vee like talk about it, but then he always says like, I'm a firefighter. Like I'm always putting out problems. And like last year, I felt like more like a therapist and like an entrepreneur last year. And you kind of fall into that category, especially in startup phases right now. There's no war between me and the boys right now, or we have an operations person. So if we honestly had a reality TV show based around like everything that had happened, it'll fucking blow your mind.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think about that too because we're in content like fuck.
Yeah,
we'd be massive.
You guys have got a good dynamic too. I would fucking watch that, to be honest.
I'll tell you a few things off the air too, so fucking blow your mind.
Yeah, mate, we're gonna wrap it up. That was great.
Thanks
I loved it. For anyone that hasn't watched your stuff before, where can they find you guys?
So YKTR is, you can find us on YouTube. We used to do weekly vlogs. We're kind of pulled away from that as well, but you can see the journey from there from 2017 to now. The growth in terms of production value. I don't even know if it works, but it looks cooler. You can find me personally at IICE_ on Instagram, slowly moving towards TikTok, and I've got a podcast called The Ice Project as well. So I'm starting to get back into that next week, but there'll be a 300 catalogue there, so go back, have a listen. And
there's some good listens in there.
Yeah, there is.
I rate it.
There is. So, yeah, thanks for having me on, bro.
No, man, I appreciate it. Thanks, Johnny, for putting it together. And to all the listeners, once again, just thanks for all the support. Really appreciate it, and hope you enjoyed the episode.
Thanks, bro.